Sayadaw has been explaining about various kinds of happiness, briefly from both theoretical and practical aspects. And today, Sayadaw will explain about two kinds of sukha. The first one is Vedayita Sukha, and the second is Avedayita Sukha, or in another words, Sandhi Sukha. The first one, Vedayita Sukha, is the kind of happiness one can gain by coming into contact with the sense objects. Because it is said as sukha, it is good feeling, it is good feeling, it is happiness. One feels happy and satisfied to gain such kind of happiness. Most of the people, they are happy to have pleasant feelings when coming into contact with pleasurable objects. There are pleasurable sights to be seen. There are good sounds, sweet sounds to be heard. There are good fragrance to be smelled. There are good flavor to be eaten. There are good touch to be touched. And there are various other objects to be thought of. By coming into contact with the six sense objects, there will be good feeling, and there will be happiness and good feeling, and it is called Vedayita Sukha. So when the striker element strikes on the receptor element, there will be seeing consciousness. And also, at other sense doors, other strikers strike, and there will be hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, touching consciousness, and so on. So, when the object and the mind come into contact at the sixth sense door, they are seeing consciousness, seeing contact, hearing consciousness, hearing contact, smelling consciousness, smelling contact, tasting consciousness, tasting contact, touching consciousness, touching contact, and also there are thoughts. When various kinds of objects strike the heart space, there can be various thoughts. So the object and the consciousness come into contact at the sense basis, at the sixth sense door, and phassa, contact, arises when the object and the consciousness come into contact at the sixth sense door. When one comes into contact with good objects, to be seen, to be heard, to be smelled, to be touched, to be tasted, to be touched, there will be good feeling, good seeing feeling, good hearing feeling, good tasting feeling, good smelling feeling, good touching feeling, and good thinking feeling. There are the example of touching when the weather is hot, when one comes into contact with the good air, with the breeze, or the cold air, there will be a good feeling. When the weather is cold, and when one touches warm air, there will be a good feeling. And also, there are good feelings coming into contact with the opposite sex, and so on. And also, when one comes into contact with pleasurable thoughts, there will also be good feeling. And some of the people, they are taking pleasure with thinking, imagining, and they feel comfortable thinking and imagining. So the kind of happiness one gains by coming into contact with the sixth sense object is called Vipassana Sukha. And most of the people believe that there will be happiness only when they come into contact with pleasurable objects at the six senses. So they try hard in order to get good objects, good sense objects, so that there will be good feeling, good hearing, good smelling, good tasting, good touching, good thinking, and so on. They don't feel content, they don't feel satisfied with what they get, so they try in every way they can in order to get better and better things. When they try to get better things in every way, that also involves unlawful means. One will try things that are unjust in order to get better things. So instead of happiness and comfort, one encounters suffering by trying to get good things unlawfully or in an unjust way. So when one does things unlawfully, one meets danger. Even if one is clever enough to stay away from danger, but because of his or her bad intention, the person will be reborn in lower existences as a result of his or her bad intention. So most of the people, they are not content with whatever they get lawfully, and these people, because they are not content with what they get, they try in every way, lawfully and unlawfully. If they perform things by body and speech unlawfully, in an unjust way, they become inferior and degraded. Most of the people, they are committing misconduct in order to make oneself happy, in order to make one's own family happy and comfortable. So they do everything lawfully and unlawfully, and some of the people, they do more things which are unlawful. So based on pamāda, based on negligence, failure to refrain from things that should be refrained, to perform things that should be performed, one meets harm and danger. Because one fails to walk on the Dhamma path, as one is negligent to refrain from things that should be refrained from, to perform things that should be performed, one does not get benefit, and also one meets harm and danger. Having extreme kind of lobha, having higher degree of greed and lust, they fail to refrain from things that should be refrained from, and such kind of people become inferior and degraded. Failing to perform things that should be performed, one does not get benefit. Vipassana Sukha is the kind of happiness one gains by coming into contact with the sixth sense objects. But the other kind of happiness is Vipassana Sukha. Vipassana Sukha is the kind of happiness that is not relating to coming into contact with the six sense objects. And it is also called Sandhi Sukha, happiness of peace. But some of the people, they think that they can only gain happiness through contact with the six sense objects, and they wonder how come the happiness will arise when one does not come into contact with the six sense objects. But actually, there really exists the kind of happiness, the happiness of peace, that has nothing to do, that is not related with contact with the six sense objects. And such kind of happiness surpasses many times than the worldly happiness that is relating to contact with the sense object. And today, Saraji will explain from both theoretical and practical aspects. The kind of Vedayita Sukha cannot be obtained freely, but one has to create the conditions where one will have access to such kind of pleasurable objects. For example, someone who loves to see movies, they need to go to a movie theater to see the movie. Someone who likes to look at picturesque place, they need to go to the place where there are scenic spots. And also, people who take pleasure in having fun, having happiness with the opposite sex, they need to look for partners and they need to date and so on. So in this way, one needs to do certain things in order to have access to such pleasurable objects. And some of the people, they try unlawfully and they meet with sankhara dukkha. In order to get pleasurable things, they need to work for it. They need to create certain conditions in order to enjoy them. Trying hard in order to get what they want, it is great suffering. One needs to try hard in order to get these things, and it is suffering. So it is called sankhara dukkha. One needs to invest suffering in order to get happiness. And the happiness one gets by trying hard, investing suffering, such kind of happiness does not last long. It lasts only a while. And again, one has to try again in order to get new object, new happiness. And again, new happiness, new comfort passes away, and one has to try again to get another kind of happiness. In this way, there is never an end. There is never an end to keep on trying to get pleasurable objects. And these pleasurable objects, they pass away, they do not last long. So people have to keep on trying in order to get new and new objects. And in order to get such Vedayita Sukha, one has to invest suffering in order to get them. When pleasurable objects pass away, then one feels the loss there will be of suffering when good objects are no longer present. So the kind of suffering encountered due to reversal or loss of these happiness is called Viparinama Sukha. So people who try to get good things unlawfully, if the other rivals take revenge, the person will get injury and so on. If the person commits things that are unlawful, the person will get punished by the authority. In this way, the person suffers intense suffering, and it is called dukkha. It is intense, great suffering as the person gets the result of his or her wrongdoing and misconduct. So in this way, the kind of happiness lasts only a moment, but the person has to suffer a lot before and after in order to enjoy a moment of happiness. So the happiness lasts only a moment, but the person has to experience Viparinama Sukha, suffering that is caused by reversal or loss, and also dukkha, intense suffering. So when one reflects in one's life, there is less of suffering, there is less of happiness than suffering. So in life, there are more suffering than happiness. When one tries to get things, even lawfully, and one enjoys such objects again and again, then the person gets bored. Even the movie that the person likes so much, she may watch once, twice, but after some time, the person gets bored with his or her own favorite movie. And other objects as well, however it may be one's favorite, but after some time, one gets bored and one needs to look for new and new objects, better and better objects. Even among partners, some people, they have partners who they love, but after some time, they get bored with him or her, they get fed up with him or her. So in this way, men look for new and new women partners, women look for new and new men partners, because they get so used to, they get so bored with one old partner. So in this way, there will be family problems, social problems, and some of the problems are difficult to be solved. If that happens, some people, even though they are human, but they resemble animals. So some of the humans, they resemble animals because they do not act like a true human. They do not have humane mind, and they do not have human knowledge. Such kind of present life will be disastrous. So even though when one gets the kind of object that one likes so much, but one cannot enjoy it for long. And also, when seeing movies and so on, they cannot enjoy it the whole day. After watching for some time, they become tired, they become bored, and they need to look for something else in order to have happiness, in order to enjoy. So they have to keep on changing objects in order to make themselves happy, in order to enjoy themselves. But after some time, again, they get bored and they need to look for something else, something new, in order to enjoy, in order to get happiness. So in this way, enjoying the six sense objects, one cannot be happy all the time. One has to keep on changing objects, to keep on changing new things in order to make them happy, and also after some time they get bored with it. So that's why the human happiness, the worldly happiness, there is actually no true happiness enjoying the six sense objects. So after enjoying the six sense objects, one gets bored with it, bored with these six sense objects, and thus one can draw conclusion that there is no true happiness in enjoying these six sense objects. So enjoying these sense objects, after some time, one has to take rest, or one has to take a nap, or sleep when sleeping time comes. So at the time of sleeping, the person is not coming into contact with the six sense objects, so there is no happiness connected with the contact with the six sense objects. At the time the person is awake, the person is coming into contact with these objects, but at the time of sleeping, one is not in contact with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking. So at the moment the person is asleep, there is no seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, or thinking. Even though the person may be sleeping on a very luxurious bed, but when she is fast asleep, the person does not know the touch between his or her body and the luxurious bed. And at the moment the person is asleep, there are no thoughts, but she is fully at rest when the person is fast asleep. So at the time of sleeping, there is a kind of happiness that has nothing to do with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and so on. But when the person is waken up by the family members, when she is asleep, the person gets really mad at the person who wakes him up. So the person who is fast asleep, if she is waken up by some other person, the person gets mad and say, "How can you disturb my sleep?" And the person even might kick the person out. So seeing this example, it shows that during sleep, there is some kind of comfort or happiness that has nothing to do with seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. And the person enjoys the peaceful sleep where the person does not see, hear, smell, taste, touch, or think. So in this way, a sound sleep or a peaceful sleep is much better than seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. The person enjoys a sound sleep. The person enjoys the peaceful feeling of a sound sleep better than seeing good things, hearing good sounds, and so on. So Avedayita Sukha can be compared to a sound sleep. And Abhidhita Sukha, of course, surpasses many times than the sound sleep. At the time the person is fast asleep, there is no contact with the five sense objects. At the time of sleeping, the Vanga Citta, or life continuum consciousness, arises, and the feeling is not obvious. So at the time of sleeping, the feeling that the person experiences during the sleep cannot be explained. And the consciousness during sleep is very subtle. And during sleep, one is not in contact with the sense object. But during sleep, there is a kind of peacefulness. And when the person wakes up, the person praises that, wow, it was a nice nap, it was a very peaceful sleep, and so on. So based on what the person praises, it shows that there is some peacefulness in the sleep, in the sound sleep. So just like when a patient moans, it's very painful, one can know that the patient is really in pain. In the same way, when the person praises his or her sleep, how good his or her sleep was, how peaceful it was, one can say that the person really has some peaceful sleep. But if the person is asked to show the peacefulness during sleep, the person cannot do that. And if the person is asked to explain how peaceful was the sleep, the person cannot explain the feeling. So it is something that one cannot explain and one cannot deny. But actually there is the kind of peacefulness in the sleep, in the sound sleep. But during sleep, there is no contact with the sense object, and during sleep there is some kind of peacefulness. Nibbana, where it is totally free from the defilements of raga, dosa, moha, is more peaceful, many times peaceful than the peaceful sleep. Even the 10 multiple times of peaceful sleep will be quite great, but Nibbana, where it is totally free from defilements, which are many times greater than the peaceful sleep, it will be more peaceful. One should be mindful at the moment of the arising of these objects. One should guard and protect one's mind with mindfulness. One should observe every arising object in order to know the true nature. By noting every arising object, one develops knowledge into the characteristics of impermanent suffering and non-self, and one will develop knowledge stage by stage. By developing knowledge, there will be momentary peace. There will be momentary peace at the time of noting, and when one's knowledge becomes matured, one will finally attain Nibbana, the ultimate peace. So yogis who are practicing, they are being mindful, they are observing every arising object in order to gain sandhi sukha, in order to gain a kind of happiness. the happiness of peace that has a guarantee. So the kind of happiness that is peaceful, that has nothing to do with contact of the sense. Contact with the sense object is avidavita sukha. In other words, it is called santi sukha, the happiness of peace. So the kind of happiness is peaceful because it is not agitated by the defilements such as raga, dosa, moha. So there will be peace because it is not agitated by the defilements. Having these defilements, having the defilements, the mind is agitated. When one comes across desirable objects, there will be grief. When one comes across undesirable objects, there will be aversion, hatred, and thus the mind is not peaceful, it is not calm. When the person is not mindful, at the moment the objects are arising, the person will be vague, dim, uncertain of the object, and there will be illusion. So the mind is not calm and not peaceful. Having santi sukha, it is peaceful happiness, where the mind is totally free from the agitation of these defilements such as raga, dosa, moha. The defilements are totally extinguished to the point of no return, and thus the mind is calm, peaceful, and it is the happiness of peace. And such kind of happiness has a guarantee. It is assured kind of happiness. In order to gain the total peace, one has to practice Vipassana meditation. One has to practice by himself, by herself, without enjoying the companionship of friends. Without companionship of friends. Practicing by himself, by herself, there will be kaya viveka, reclusion from companionship. When one is being mindful on these objects, one's mind will be free from nivarana, hindrances, when the person is mindful. And there will be citta viveka, reclusion from these defilements and hindrances. When the mind is recluded from defilements and hindrances, there will be viveka sukha, happiness of seclusion. The mind will not be agitated by these defilements. When the person gains knowledge, there will be vipassana sukha, happiness of peace. When one attains udyabaya jnana, knowledge into first arising and passing away of the object, the kind of happiness will be great. And as the yogi attains higher knowledges, there will be more and more peacefulness. By practicing Satipatthana meditation, one gains knowledge, discerning mind and matter, and one develops knowledge stage by stage. By developing knowledge, one gains Sambodha Sukha, where the mind is not agitated by these defilements, and thus there will be momentary peace when one develops knowledge. One will be gaining momentary peace, moment by moment, and finally, when Vipassana knowledge becomes matured, one finally attains Magga and Phala Jnana, path and fruition knowledge. When the person attains path and fruition knowledge, the person experiences the true peace, the true happiness. When one attains Magga-phala jnana, path and fruition knowledge, one experiences Avedavita Sukha, the kind of true happiness that has nothing to do, that is not relating with the contact of the sense object. By attaining Avedavita Sukha through Magga-phala jnana, by attaining Avedavita Sukha through path and fruition knowledge, one values such kind of happiness. One really knows the value that it surpasses many times than the worldly happiness. In order to gain momentary peace, one has to practice systematically according to the guidance given. One has to practice according to the correct method. Dispelling and removing the opposite mental state of raga, dosa, moha is connected with practicing systematically according to the correct method. And in order to practice correctly, one has to listen to guidance and instruction, and one has to follow strictly by the guidance and instruction. And therapy will continue to explain tomorrow.